Isn't it always the way? You lay out grand plans, energized with high ambition, throw yourself into preparation, working hard to make yourself into a fit instrument for new purposes, and then life suddenly interrupts and insists, "Forget it, buddy, you're working on this instead." For those who've been wondering about my absence, my extraordinary and courageous wife recently experienced an acute and extreme health crisis. Very different from the chronic condition she's been struggling with so long and hard for decades. Scared us both quite badly. We're still way off balance. She's on oxygen therapy, hopefully temporarily, though it's too soon to tell, and has a long-term challenge ahead to rebuild her strength and return to function and confidence. And I've eaten and slept so little in the last few weeks that I'm nothing but skin and bones right now. The last time I weighed 56 kilograms, 124 pounds for old-timers like me, I was just 17 years old. But the world keeps turning, and while she works to build herself up again, I must get back to pushing the marker down the course. Solving for rent is a big one. I need to cultivate a few more revenue streams. So anyone who could use a reliable and compassionate mad genius in their back pocket, do please let me know. All of that being said, my intellectual, creative, and political duties have never been clearer to me. Nor have these drives ever been more usefully unified. I have that rarest of things in this corrosively cynical age, a genuine and very clear mission of humane compassion and outreach. A couple of dear older friends in the radio trade have been urging me to join them and contribute my challenges and reasoning to their own long broadcast quest for sanity and inspiration. I like my younger chums no less, and I'm even more eager to communicate with them. So I knew at once that I should craft it as both a radio show and a podcast, so I could speak to everyone at once, and also to allow the macro message to build cumulatively, rather than each part airing and then fading away as radio talk so often does, often before the picture on the puzzle box even becomes clear. My longtime readers already know I'm a fierce opponent of factionalism. Anger is widespread and easy to justify. It's even enjoyable stuff. Technically speaking, it's a form of arousal, at least as far as the human nervous system is concerned. But if indignation was going to solve our problems, we would have already solved them a half a century ago or more. Weirdly, we materially rich humans in the West are among the most petulant people who have ever lived. But my problem with factions and anger is not that they can't ever be justified, but that too many people, especially young people, are badly hurt by the huge and arrogant generalizations these justifications require. We have a duty to do better. When you start reading your way into European history over the last few hundred years, one of the most striking features is the long, vicious conflict between Catholics and Protestants. As a history keener and an atheist, I was always baffled by the most obvious logical problem here. How could two sides, which both claim virtue on earth as their goal and loyalty to the Prince of Peace as their creed, scheme, hate, and kill so very much, with so very little shame about it? That question really doesn't seem so baffling or such a mystery to me anymore. Modern factions on the left and the right are no less vicious and hypocritical. Liberal heroes impose grand-scale racist enslavements on others very comfortably, and conservatives cheerfully betray the strategic interest and fritter away hard-earned winter food reserves with just as little doubt or principled self-awareness. They are wrong is an easy thing to say, but even though it feels like it, that wrongness has absolutely nothing to do with we being right. Not ever. Binary positions aren't even precisely true in circuits. You rarely measure a completely perfect 0 no or 5-volt yes, because idealizations like that are theoretical. In the physical world, we have thresholds and ranges and rates of change which are almost always happen exponentially, instead of in a linear, counting-based way. So, right off the bat, clear, simple certainty is rarely something we could prove or observe in the world. Only feel, and even then, mostly when we're fooling ourselves. Epistemology is a whole branch of knowledge all about how do we know what we know. And it reliably increases your modesty when you study or meditate upon it, because you begin to see how often you are yourself quite wrong, and how many of your own fancy ideas have been based upon a foundation which cannot support their weight. When I hear an idea that makes me feel like I'm one of the good guys, or makes me feel my anger at them is extra justified, I am immediately suspicious. Emotionally, I can feel that my mind wants that idea to be a truth. But this is where almost all self-deception begins. So I do my best to refute these ideas quickly, with harsh and exacting rigor. Conversely, when I hear an idea which disturbs me, because it gives me insight into large groups of people that I used to be comfortable dismissing as morally lost and or outright enemies, I try my best to work all the way through it in detail, learning every humanizing and humbling thing I can from it as I go. You know why? Because groups of people are themselves dangerous mental simplifications, designed for hating and loving irrationally, and nothing else. Variation between individuals exceeds variation between types. I've said that before, and you'll hear it again from me for sure. Can't be said enough. Grouping people, whether by ethnicity, economics, culture preferences, or worst of all, political affiliations, is for dictators and their henchmen, not for humane beings. Now, let me leave you all with an idea I think especially helpful for finding compassion when it's hard and offering it in a way that won't make it feel wasted. The world is so incredibly complicated, confusing, frustrating, and frightening right now that no one is clever and emotionally strong enough to be able to stand to look at even half of what's going on with an objective, rational, best information only sort of approach. The rest of it, the overflow that we lack the capacity to study in a deeply rational way, gets filled in with comforting, emotional simplifications, usually bolstered by a few appealing, very carefully selected, and thus highly sketchy factoids. Less than half is actually my working title for the show under development, though this may still change several times before I finally go to air. The too muchness of the world is a true and a very important thing that we all have in common, and that is itself important to recognize. Many day-to-day arguments we have with others are based on one side having knowledge in that subject and the other strong feeling. But this doesn't mean one is entirely smart and one is completely dumb. If we had begun our arguments in a different subject, even in arguments between people of wildly different levels of intelligence, these positions would be reversed. The thing is, smart people are capable of processing more information, but they also fool themselves and are fooled by others far more completely. Propaganda has been proven to be most effective on the clever idiots who actually invest in the emotionally exciting concepts offered. Now, for those who recognize real peril in this moment, fear not. I'm not being general here out of cowardice, but because this point requires it. I will be naming names and stepping on plenty of famous and infamous toes in the pieces yet to come. But just for today, and just for the exercise, see if you can go a few days without fuming about how bad they are, and instead, and how great that makes our team by contrast. Try asking instead, How many people are we stepping on, hurting, scorning, ignoring, turning away, and embittering with our own fool arrogance? Because this is the other thing we all have in common. Just like those centuries of religious conflicts that still put so many high schoolers to sleep in class, the fine high principles we claim as individuals and as teams are not really the guiding emotional forces in our lives. Even a quick examination proves this, and the gulf between our claims and our real cost to the world is a lot more like the horrible sins of them than we are comfortable admitting. Now, cheers, my friends. Thanks so much for looking in again. And thank you even more for all the support and good wishes you have sent along to my dear Catherine and myself in this very difficult time. We can all do a lot more of that simple empathy than we do, and find it also for more people than we yet have. That sort of heartfelt outreach action doesn't just make the world a better place, it makes our compassion, understanding, and yes, intelligence stronger also, which brings every one of the problems that frustrate and infuriate us a whole lot closer to a real-world solution. Oh, and one last note here. Just because losing 35 pounds in a couple of weeks through sheer worry is not an experiment I could recommend to any of my friends. My ribs are xylophone ready, and my hip bones are sticking out rather grotesquely. But when I look down at myself, I still see a deplorable potbelly. You don't have to be female to have a crazy and harmful body image. Nor does self-bullying help when you're trying to build new strength. Cheers, folks. See you again soon.